our clinical director here. I'm going to give him the honor of introducing it.
You just don't have any spiel, do you?
Maybe not. It's been a long day. Okay. So we're going to talk about games for good, because I do a lot of topics about how games are not bad, and I want to pivot the discussion and just celebrate all the great and wonderful things that games are for all of us. So we could talk here all day. I had to kind of narrow it down a little bit into these two broad categories about games being used in therapy and games being used in education. That said, we're going to try to leave a lot of time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions about not just this, but any topics in general, what you're thinking about games, your experiences, that sort of thing, we'll have plenty of time for that. So to get started, I'm like fangirling over this group of people I have for you today, because they represent 5 incredible nonprofit organizations that work in games for good. They're amazing. I'm like seriously blushing. I'm so excited. Okay, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
My name is Adam Davis. I'm the executive director and one of the founders of Game to Grow, which is a nonprofit organization based in the Seattle area, and we're dedicated towards the use of games of all kinds for educational, therapeutic, and community development. We run therapeutic social skills groups for teenagers to help them build social skills. We also have a Kickstarter project right now on Kickstarter called Critical Core. I forgot my flyers for them, so go to criticalcore.org. We're fully funded. We have a stretch goal with Jerry Holkins, so check that out. I also, part of the reason I'm here is because I wrote the curriculum for a social skills training program using dialectical behavioral therapy. I got all my acronyms mixed up. Using video games to help kids build interpersonal effectiveness skills.
That was very well done and very good description yourself. My name is Dr. Ryan Kelly. I'm a psychologist. I'm also co-founder of Geeks Like Us. It's a media company where we talk anything geek, nerd, psychology, science, especially when those cross, in a way to support the community, to entertain, to educate, and to help people be unapologetically enthusiastic and to provide that community. I work a lot with kiddos on the spectrum, and I've done research on how to make video games to improve social skills as well as tabletop games. And I'm the co-author and illustrator of the first Aspie superhero comic book.
So hi everybody, I'm Dr. B. The name is long and Italian, and if you see it, you'll understand why. Just B. But I'm the clinical director. Take this. Who's not heard of Take This? Yay! Introduction. You know, I have letters after my name. I get to make up words. So, Take This was the first mental health nonprofit to serve the game community, starting in 2012. Our origin story is sad, as most are. Won't get into it here. But what we're best known for, aside from the behind-the-scenes things we do with game companies, studios, consultations, managerial trainings, we help train the enforcers here at these shows. We have our stream ambassadors who create mental health awareness online, is our AFK room, which is the most boring room at the show by design. Go in there, it's room 251. It is confusingly quiet and soothing. Stand in there long enough and you will watch people hit the wall of silence and kind of go, But I'm also, in my non-Take This life, I'm a trainer of clinicians in the use of applied role-playing games. And I've also used a lot of applied gaming in my private practice in various ways. Yeah, so that's why I'm here.
I don't think I can follow that. So I'm Dr. Anthony Dean. I'm a clinical psychologist down in Fort Worth, Texas. And I am the executive director of the TELOS Project, which is the non-profit mental health clinic that I run down in Fort Worth. I primarily work with gamers, geeks, and nerds down there. And I am the author of Working with Video Gamers and Games of Therapy and the editor of Psychology of Legend of Zelda.
My name is Mat Bergendahl. I am a licensed clinician and member of the NBCC, the National Board of Certified Counselors. I work for Stack Up, a nonprofit organization that is geared towards providing support to the mental health and betterment of our veterans, including civilians. My position is the manager of the STOP program, which is a Stack Up Overwatch program, which we'll talk a little bit more later. But basically, we provide 24/7 peer-to-peer support by our volunteer staff for service members, veterans, including civilians who are needing assistance not only with just crisis intervention, but also benefit questions, issues with the VA, or just a place to come and vent. We do this all through well-trained staff members and through the support program that we use.
I told you they were good. Okay. So we're going to talk first about games as a therapeutic intervention, and we are going to start with that.
So I mentioned earlier, most of the work that I do with Game to Grow is about using Dungeons and Dragons. So I had an opportunity, thanks to Child's Play, the nonprofit Child's Play, which I encourage you to go support, to help create an entire curriculum, a 10-week curriculum, using video games to teach dialectical behavioral therapy skills. So this was all about, specifically around helping kids build interpersonal effectiveness. So a lot of the kids, so the after-school programs was free to attend, which was fantastic. A lot of the kids that were in a South Seattle school, if they didn't have something to do after school, they would probably go home, be by themselves, play video games by themselves, or potentially get into some trouble. So it was a fantastic opportunity for us to address some real issues at the school, while also teaching them how to interact with each other in a way that was positive and pro-social, and using a language that they understand. So all these kids were all gamers. We started off at the very beginning talking about something that everybody knew and loved. And all of a sudden, these socially isolated kids have a common language, and they can see each other and know that they're not alone. And that was a big part of what we wanted to do with this program, so that these kids who oftentimes would sit and eat lunch by themselves, they now can go sit with that other person from the gaming group. And that was a big outcome that we saw over the course of time. So what we did is this is definitely a training program, so it's very different than a lot of the work that I do with Game to Grow. We actually had a skill we taught every day. But what was interesting about this is that we taught the skill using a video game. So raise your hand if you've ever played the game Overcooked. Awesome. So you guys know that Overcooked is potentially a very frustrating game that requires a lot of communication. So what we would do is let them play the game, but make them play silently. And you can beat the first level, maybe the second level, but we said you have to get 2 stars to move on. So over time, the game becomes really hard, and then we now have an opportunity to show those kids how important it is to actually communicate. So then we introduce a skill, and we have this thing that I made up called the interpersonal effectiveness triangle, knowing that every time you're interacting with somebody, there's 3 potential outcomes of that interaction. There's getting the thing that you want, there is maintaining or improving the relationship, and then there's maintaining your self-respect. And each one of those things, you can have some or all of those things, but sometimes none of those things when you have an interpersonal interaction with somebody. So then we would use the video game to teach the specific skills of how to ask for what you want. And we would break it down in sentence frames. We'd have them pause the game, put the controllers down, and say, I'm noticing that there are some dishes that are in the sink, and they're piling up. And we need those dishes for the soup, for the king, for the onion king. Would you please pay attention to the dishes? So we're teaching this skill of very clear sentence frames, helping them understand just how valuable that is. And then when they start using this skill, the kids that use this skill actually do better in the game. They get farther, they beat more levels, and then we have challenges where they can choose which color controller. So it's sort of an extrinsic reward to choose which color controller you want. But now there's like a status around how well you communicate to be able to choose the green controller instead of the black controller. And over time, we saw a lot of the kids who were really resistant at the very beginning to coming into any sort of skills training program. Now they're like eager to go to the gaming group after school. They now have opportunities to sit with kids at lunch, which may seem like a small thing, but for a lot of young people, that's gigantic. Having a common language you can talk about. So we used Overcooked, we used Death Squared, we used Nidhogg, Samurai Gun. These are games that aren't like educational games. They're not therapeutic games. They're games that are fun, and they're games that are more fun when you play with other people. So then I actually went up and talked to the guys from Nidhogg at one of the other PAXs, and I was like, I use your game in a therapeutic group, and they go, what? Which is Yeah, that's the dialectical behavioral therapy program that I ran. So,
See, what's so great about this is games are stereotyped as antisocial. And yes, they're being used to teach social skills. And I love that you use unconventional games. Like, I played Math Blaster as a child to learn math skills.
All right.
number muncher.
Who's old enough to remember that? Yeah.
Math munchers? What about that one?
Number munchers?
Was it number munchers?
Number munchers with the little green.
Yeah. And you played to get that reinforcement after the third level, get the video.
Much more fun to play.
Was that? Oh, the floppy. Yeah. That's right.
All right, very good. Thank you, Adam. Oh, now we get to move down to the end. Matt's going to talk about negative symptom reduction.
Hello. So to get a little bit more in depth about StackUp, if anyone's ever been to the website stackup.org, you'll notice that at the heart of it is video games. Now, what is not commonly known and something that we're actually trying to expand upon and talk more about is that every single program that we run, the Aerosol program where we bring veterans out here to PAX, the local Stacks program where it's a local community, then we have the StackUp Overwatch program. Each one of them has a mental health component to it, with STOP being probably the most direct, direct route for mental health help. But the interesting thing about it all is that video games is one way that we use to try and bring the social connections between veterans and other veterans, and of course, civilians as well. What we've noticed, and what I've noticed, at least clinically, is that video games themselves has been a way to help build that rapport. Now, it's something that we use in the mental health sector all the time when we're working with a client, is building up that rapport. But the same thing still is just as effective when a stack lead or a StackUp member is working with a brand new veteran or a brand new civilian who just joined the program and are trying to navigate their own personal issues. And when you say, okay, let's just go play a video game. Fire up a game, doesn't matter which one, first-person shooter, RPG, MMO, doesn't matter. We're going to go and talk and video talk or do something so that we're engaged with each other. And it seems to be, under my observations, that as soon as that starts, the rapport building starts. And so that person who's new to the program starting to feel a little bit more engaged, connected, and so they start dropping out hints as far as what's going on with their lives. And so even in the STOP program, when we have someone who's coming in to try and get some kind of assistance, we actually bring that up. We say, what do you do for your hobbies? What kind of games do you play? And sometimes the games that they play give us some insight to their personality as well, what's going on, and we try to capitalize on that as well. And so, again, we use video games heavily in our program. It's at the cornerstone of what we do. It's just that we also bring in the mental health into it as well. And the STOP program is no different. And what's really cool about it is we're seeing how it's turning people's lives around. In fact, last night we had a situation, or 2 nights ago we had a situation going on at STOP. And I'm going to call you out a little bit, Daniel. Daniel and I were working with the person, and we were trying to help guide them through a very tough situation. All through Discord, all through DMs, and talking about, what do they do for gaming, because, that's part of the component. And so that is the reason why I have such a passion between bringing together, the clinical side and the gaming side, because they really do mesh well. And I would like to, and that's why I'm here on these panels, is to help advance how that awareness can really benefit not just us, the community of gamers, but everybody. I mean, it depended on how you approach the subject.
Exactly, and what StackUp is doing, as well as all the panelists out here, is that we know as gamers the social community of games. We live here at PAX. But taking that into a therapeutic setting, it's just magnified. The rapport is instant. I mean, if I went to a skill building class, or if I was looking for help when I was in crisis, and they said, what games do you play? It's almost like going to the AFK room. It's like, oh, they get me. Right? All right, Dr. Bean.
Yes, I use video games very heavily for personal development of all my clients, and it's really, really quite interesting to watch them grow through the choice of characters that they choose to play as, but also not just the character that they decide to develop, but their skill sets that they learn through playing the game. So taking an idea of this, I have one of my favorite clients, and he's about to discharge. Came in and was undiagnosed Asperger's, and so he had a lot of difficulties understanding why he was being bullied, how he was being bullied, what he could do because of it. And through the game, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which was the one he was playing, we really worked very heavily on the choice of his development of the character, why he chose to use Link in a certain way, in which order of the temples did he go, in order to have a better idea of why he chose to do that. So say for instance, one thing that he has a lot of difficulties with is misinterpreting stuff that is happening around him. So recently he had a substitute teacher, which is no longer a substitute teacher, for reasons, and would blame him for a lot of things that were happening in the classroom, and he felt like there was a lot of blame. And on some level, he may or may not have been doing something in there, but he was looking to learn more about it, about what was going on. And the true nature of his questions to the teacher was he didn't understand what the teacher was asking, because the teacher was a substitute teacher and had a really bad, unfortunate anger problem, and was not able to express himself adequately. So my client was shoved on out into the hall on multiple occasions and yelled at by the substitute teacher, and we had to discuss when he would have that, what does he do? How does he hold up a shield as Link would? And how does he then have to brandish the sword to find out how to encroach upon the substitute teacher in a manner where he could get the question out that he was like, I don't understand what you're asking for. I can do the work. I'm not a problem child because he's a straight A student in all the honors classes, but I don't understand what you're doing, why you're asking this question, and why can't I just ask you this other clarifying question overall. So through the Legend of Zelda, we would focus in on how do you use those ideas, those mechanics in the game to help your other areas of your life as well. For him, it was schoolwork and social engagement. But we also, all of us up here, I think, have used video games on some level for personal development of understanding ourselves, the concept of who am I, and how do we then explore that in different identity formations. So the idea of like the self-access concept and the ability to know what drives us, what motivates us in certain areas. And that's really what we focus in on heavily at my nonprofit clinic, is we have them draw out their characters, we have them talk about their characters, we engage them on the level that they're there. Because once they're engaged in that, they don't want to leave the session. We almost have to kick them out because they want to keep on talking. Because they like to talk about this stuff and they can use it as a literal interpretation of behavior and how can we solve our problems in lots of different areas.
I don't feel like I don't have anything to add to that. It's perfectly wrapped up. Okay, so we're going to pivot slightly away from therapeutic intervention, although this is related, to games as an educational intervention. And we're going to start with skill building, which we touched on a little bit, but Dr. Kelly.
So my wife texted me to wonder how this is going. Can I do my thing?
So you can do your
Okay, so I've got a running tradition here. My wife is incredibly gullible. The first time I did a panel, she asked me how it was going, and I said, oh, it's going terrible. And I actually got the audience to just boo really loudly. Like, you hear one guy in the back, yeah, you hear one guy in the back, you suck! Like all this. And I said it to her, she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, it didn't go that way. So she's incredibly gullible. So whenever she texts me during, it's I can tell it's a stressful comment where it's like, is everything okay? How's it going? How's the panel going? So she just did that, so now if you would entertain me here, in a moment I'm going to record all of you, and I just want you to boo. Like you just hate, like we're racist, just awful people doing this panel, and it's just the worst. All right. We're the most vile. All right, are you ready?
Am I crying again?
Oh, we're going to be crying. Oh, okay. Oh. All right. You ready? 1, 2, go. Right, that's right.
What a great real-life example.
That's right. So skill building, there'd be a couple ways to think of it, okay? I think the first way I like to think of it is just osmosis. Just by playing the game without even proactively working on much, you're developing skills. Just think about cognitive abilities or cognitive skills. When we look at people who play like first-person shooters, like CSGO, Apex, imagine what you have to do there. You start the game and you're trying to imagine where am I going to drop, the distance between different locations, the loot rates, all these things, speed at which to get where am I going to go, and you have to develop this visual spatial ability, right, where you can say, let me take this map and then make a 3D copy and put it in my head and be able to rotate it and be able to put myself in it and make estimations of the length of time, etc. from each thing. It's a phenomenal skill that you just gain playing it. And we see for kiddos who play those games, they score higher in that a lot of time than kiddos who do not. So as well as like social skills. Now, we had almost got a study through Blizzard to run some panels on guilds that have Aspies in it. It didn't pan out, but we got a little data. And we have a number of studies that show this of kiddos who, are like, well, anybody, I'm saying kiddos, I tend to work with young, but anybody who plays, when they're communicating with, say, in a guild, this World of Warcraft was what we were looking at. And they're communicating in a guild, and they have to learn Aspies in particular, right? Even say hello can be hard for them sometimes. And what we found is they got better at greetings, better at social reciprocity. Hey, how are you doing? I'm fine, how are you? Cool, validating statements, asking follow-up questions, things that don't always come as naturally, right? It just happened. Now, admittedly, if they didn't get face-to-face, we actually saw something called social cocooning, where face-to-face got a little tougher. But it's not bad, it's just because they got so comfortable with talking through a computer-mediated form, right? So those came naturally. Then you have games that are incredibly fun, and you can, they're not meant for education or anything, but you can capitalize on it. And I'll use my son for example. Right now, so he's 6, just turned 6, and we're playing Breath of the Wild. And we're starting off, and we get some amber and so on. I'm sure you'll play it. That's a pretty decent way to get some money and buy things. And he's like, oh, I want this. I can't remember what it was. He's like, I want this thing. And I'm like, that's a trash item. But I'm not just like, oh, I'll do it. And I'm like, we don't have money, pal. And he's like, well, we could sell those amber. It's like, all right. And I told him, we're going to have to go grind later. If you do it, that'll be fine. Right? And so he spends it all. And then the next thing, oh, this item's cool. And it's like, we don't have any money. And so we had to learn about token economy. Right, learning about like how to manage funds, how to do that, as well as things like reading. Again, if he wants to play without dad, he's going to be able to read it enough, so we're practicing his sight words. So it's just a standard game, but it's a fantastic medium to just teach even reading, writing, and math. Right, so it doesn't even have to be specifically designed. And then the other would be designing games specifically to help us out. So in 2011, I did a study with Mark Zimmerman. He created a social skills video game called Social Express. And basically we took kiddos on the spectrum. We did a social skills group, and then we took one with the same group, same module, but added Social Express. The ability to role play in a video game with social skills that have gamification, reinforcement for doing things correctly, and social motivation was vastly improved among that latter group because they felt more successful. Skill development was there. So gaming is a phenomenal tool for skill building across the board, whether it be education, social skills, therapy, as we said. So, and which is why we're all up here, and we love to use it.
And I think it's a really important point about the unintentional learning that's happening. So we talk about games and therapy where we're purposefully using games